Okay, a reminder that domain is all of the x values. So if domain is the x values, this is review. What's the range? Y values. Brilliant. Write it down. You're reviewing. If you're looking at a graph, the domain will go from left to right, and the range will go from lowest to highest. Sometimes our domain and range are written as a list of numbers. Sometimes they're written using inequalities. Depends on if they're connected or not. Please change this to not that. Y equals negative x plus 3. Change the equation. Otherwise your notes won't make sense. Okay? Y equals negative x plus 3. Negative 5x won't fit on the grid that I put on there, so whoops, my bad. Okay. What number is in front of x right now? A 1 or a negative 1, right? So now I need you to go ahead and graph the points like you normally would on your paper. If you have a pen, this is going to be a problem for you. But if you have a pencil, it shouldn't be a big deal. Graph the points. Go. If you graph your points, they should look like this. You start at positive 3 and go down 1, right 1. Over and over. And you can reverse it. Okay, but here's the thing. So check your line, make sure you have those points. And I hope that you use pencil. I only want the domain or the x values of negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2. Everything else, we're going to erase. So I only want those 5 points. So get your eraser ready. Here we go. Negative 2. So that would be this one? That one. So I want negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2. That means that we're going to erase these two. That would leave negative 2 and over. Okay, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2. Do I need this point? No, it's at 3. So everything 3 and over, erase it as well. You have officially graphed, and make sure your points are really obvious, only over that specific domain of negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2. I gave you a list of x values. If I'm telling you a list of points, do I want you to connect them? No. I only want those numbers, not the numbers in between. So leave them separate. Now tell me the range. The range, if the domain was a list of numbers, so should the range be a list of numbers. The range is our y values. What is the lowest y value right now?
1.
1. It goes 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5. List out your range. You are not going to write it in an inequality because it's 5 separate points. Just like your domain was 5 separate points. Go ahead and graph this line as normal, please. Go ahead and graph the points as normal, and then we'll decide what to erase. Go. Example 2. Should have a slope of 2 over 1. Be going up to right 1. Some of us are still trying to go left. So you need to erase this point. Say goodbye. This one's at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Are these okay?
Yes.
Yes.
0 is
okay, but look at your domain specifically. It's or equal to 0. So this one can stay. We're doing x values greater than or equal to 0. Am I going to connect the points?
Yes.
Yes. It's not a list of numbers. So you're going to connect them. Oh, that's an eraser. Whoops. Connect them like this. And it's everything greater than or equal to 0, so it does keep going forever in that direction. If your domain was an inequality, your range should also be an inequality. Range is your y values. Okay, look at your beautiful little graph. Where does your y value, or Where do your y values start, the lowest point?
2.
2. And then do they ever stop?
No.
No, arrow to infinity and beyond, starting at 2. So the range is at y values greater than or equal to 2, at 2 and up. That's what that means. First thing I need you to do, step 1, be with me please, write your slope as a fraction. Or second thing to think about, after you have the fraction, your change in y over change in x gives you the scale. When I say scale, I mean how you're going to label your axes, like how you're going to put the numbers on the grid. Last thing, check that your points fit on the grid. Check that your points all fit. We're going to do one example of this today. Write this down. Right now, look at the equation. Which number is my slope? The 200 or the negative 50? The negative 50, because the negative 50 is by the variable. So if you make that into a fraction, I need you to write this down to the right-hand side. If you're talking over me, you're going to miss this. You got to know how to do this. I promise if you do it the way I'm doing it, you will be successful, but you got to pay attention. Change in y over change in x. My slope as a fraction is negative 50 over 1. Write that down on the right-hand side. Leave it like that. We know the slope's negative 50. I don't need you to simplify it. I want it as a fraction because this tells you when you're labeling your y-axis, label it by 50s. Have it change by 50s. When you label the x-axis, go by 1s and label it by 1s. Okay, before we start doing that, so that gives you the scale. Change in y needs to be 50, change in x needs to be 1. What is our y-intercept? Look at the equation. Jordan, what is it? 200. The y-intercept is 200, so you're going to start at 200. So just make sure that you can go all the way up to 200. Okay, we're going to start with the y. The change in y's need to be changing by 50s. Here's the thing. Don't have each square worth 50, because then it's going to go 0, 50, 100, 150, 200, and then you're going to graph it like right here in this tiny little corner, which would be kind of ridiculous. You have all this space. Use it. Okay. You have to put 0 in the corner. Do that. We have to go at least up to 200. We're going to label by 50s. Okay, think about if you got these squares, how many squares you can skip it and spread it out. How many squares does it make sense to skip for 50? 5. That way each square is worth 10. So be with me. So we're going to skip 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and label 50. And then do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 100. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 150. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 200. Good. We will have space to start at 200. That's important. So this would be your y-axis. Your change in y is 50. You want to label that. That way it's easy to graph your slope in a second. All right. Your x's, your change in x is 1. Again, it would be a bad idea. Look up here. It would be a bad idea to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the corner. Spread it out. Because it's only going to take you 4 hours to get home, so it's going to stop there. It doesn't matter how you do this, so long as you have space to stop at 4, because that's how long it'll take. I'm going to skip 4 squares. You're welcome to skip like 2 or 5. it could look slightly different, but you want to spread it out like this. Spread out your numbers, use the space you've been given, something like that. You could skip 2, you could skip 4, you could skip 5. Should be spread out. So T stood for time, and that was our X, or like our independent variable. So time, and then you have to say hours. What's the y-axis going to be, or my dependent variable? Ari? Distance from home. Distance from, I'm already writing sideways. Distance from home, and you need to put in parentheses miles. So notice how I have what it is in unit, time in hours, distance in miles. But I'm going to title the graph driving home. Start your graph at 200 and go down 50 on my labels and over 1. So my first point would be here. Depending on how you've scaled your graph on the x's, it might look just a little bit different. Look at where your numbers are. It's down 50 over 1. Down 50 over 1. It should hit the x-axis at 4, which means it takes 4 hours to get home.
Right. But if you just divide by 4, there's a range.
You need to connect these points because when you're driving, you can have 1.5 hours and 3.5 hours and part of a mile. You do connect those. Your domain goes from 0 to 4. And you want to use H for hours. So domain goes from 0 to 4 because it's from left to right. My range starts at 0. Lowest. What's the highest point? 200. So the range goes from 0 to 200. What's my label? D, right? Distance. Range goes from 0 to 200. Okay, to answer this question, I would encourage you to use your equation. So use the equation that you were given, that the distance is 200 minus 1.5 t. If I'm asking 1.5 hours, oh, did I mess that up? It's minus 50, isn't it? Yeah, there we go. Cole, where should the 1.5 hours go in my equation? Where do I plug it in? Time, yeah. So you're going to put hours where t is for time. 50 times 1.5 would be 75. So minus 75. Your distance from home would be 125 miles.